So good morning. I'm with the legendary Hall of Fame promoter, Frank Warren. Beautiful pictures behind you of, I take it, Muhammad Ali.
Yes, they are.
Very comfortable looking sofa. You're looking very well. I reckon you've been jogging, haven't you?
No, my old knee's gone. I had a couple of operations in January and February on my lower back and neck. I had a couple of discs taken out, so I'm walking, but I'm walking a lot, and I'm in the gym because I've got sod wells to do. So that's what I'm doing.
Now, Frank, we spoke briefly yesterday, and I know that you've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes with Robert Smith, with the Boxing Board of Control, with your television broadcasters, with your fighters. Have you created a lean machine to come back when the green light comes on?
Well, I think we're in a good position. We've made a lot of, we've invested a lot of time and money, by the way, in finding the best ways to do this. We've taken advice from some eminent doctors. We've also been talking to one of our trainers, Alan Smith, who's got quite a substantial cleaning business. They do a lot of hospitals, so he's been giving us a lot of advice what we needed to do, because obviously the hospital's being cleaned to a certain standard. That's what we've got to ensure what happens with not just with the venue, but it's the gyms. And it's really, when you get the green light, it's not, oh, let's all show up and put a show on and all wear masks. It's all the stuff leading up to it. First of all, you've got the fighters have got to be fit to box. So they've got to be hopefully ticking over whilst we've all been locked down, keep themselves in shape. And they've got to get into sparring, which means close personal contact. It's got to be in a sterile environment, so the gyms have got to be cleaned and cleaned on a regular basis. They've got to be tested regularly, which is, again, something that's quite crucial. And the board came out with a list of guidelines, which I think that's after a lot of conversations between various promoters, including myself, to put into place. One of them I'm not too sure about how we're going to deal with it, which we probably come on to during our conversation. But it's ensuring that all these things are in place. It's ensuring that we do what we always do as promoters. We're responsible for all the medical and safety aspects of promotions. So we've got to make sure that we've got the doctors there, that the paramedics are there, that the ambulances are there. And all these, by the way, just in case anybody worries, these are not from the NHS. We pay for these. These are all private. The only way the NHS would be involved if, God forbid, a boxer got badly injured in the ring, and had to go to a neurological unit. But that could happen in any sport, and that in fact happens in a lot of sports more than it does in boxing. And being realistic, how many shows are there going to be when this green light, when they do give us the green light? It's only going to happen with promoters who have a TV deal, because they are behind closed doors, so you've got no revenue from the live gate. So it's probably going to be a couple of us promoting. So that's not going to be a burden on the board of control or the medical aspects of it, because if we do a show a week each, it's going to be 4 doctors that are going to attend for a few hours and so forth. So obviously the government won't allow any of this to happen, including us and football and any other sports, which also need medical requirements and so forth, unless they feel that it's not a burden on the NHS. And it seems, as much as the government's been getting a bit of stick over the last few days and so forth, I think they've done an extremely good job in controlling the virus, in as much that it's not become that the NHS has, despite, I know there's been some deaths, but they've been able to cope with it as far as volume. They haven't had to really use the Nightingale hospitals. I think only one of them is being used, so I understand, for about 30 beds. So they managed to contain it. But obviously, there will be a second wave if people disregard the measures that are in place. So that's why it's paramount for boxing that when we do come back, that we ensure that this is done correctly, because there's no room for any cowboys or people cutting corners. This has got to be done properly. Each show will probably have about 5 fights maximum there, so that's 10 boxers. So if 2 promoters or even 3 promoters are running shows with that volume, that's 30 fighters a week. There's normally 30 shows a week. So a lot of boxers are going to be struggling. We normally put cards on with 12 or 14 fights on. So you're reducing them by just under a third. So it's going to be tough for fighters. And the most important thing, as I see it at the moment, is that the top echelon of the fighters, the Tyson Furies, the Anthony Joshuas, and the various other champions, should be well off to come through this. Should that be financially secure? Some of the other guys will be struggling. Certainly, the youngsters coming through will be struggling, and I don't want to lose their enthusiasm. It's tough for people to get motivated in this lockdown because we're all in the same boat. None of us knows what tomorrow will bring and when we can work and so forth. But with boxers specifically aim towards a date. When they train, it's for a specific date so they can get to maximum condition. And there's nothing there at the moment. And to keep that, when you look at the amount of shows that go on in the country, to keep everybody engaged, it's going to be very difficult. And I don't want them seeing giving up on the sport and deciding that they can't do this. And if they can get a job, which will be difficult in the market anyway, but if they can get a job elsewhere, they'd much rather do that rather than wait. So we've got to be really, really focused. And as a sport and as an industry, we all got to work together to try and get, ensure it's as safe as possible, because it's try and get as many shows on as we can.
But when I've got a specific point, but on what you've just said, so you start with 10, let's say that goes for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks. Will there be a look to increase the number of fighters on a card then as this thing opens up? So maybe by October, you can have 10 fights on a card, Well,
it's all going to depend on social distancing. At the end of the day, it's down to the government and their advisors. They're going to tell us what we're allowed to do. We can put all the measures in place. We can do all these things. But who knows what's going to happen? Maybe, I'm hoping that they'll allow that something will happen where people can attend shows. I mean, the last thing we want is to be running shows behind closed doors. The sport, like all sports, rely on a proportion of their proportion of their revenue from the live gates, live attendances. So we're losing out on that, and then we're going to incur these additional costs of making it safe, which is not, it's not going to be cheap. So we need to be doing that. I mean, there's no money in this for us. What we're doing is keeping the sport relevant.
Yeah,
getting it out there, because what I'm concerned with is that, the two major players in sport in this country, BT and Sky, they're basically driven by football. That's what their subscribers mostly pay for, is to watch football. Of course, boxing comes in next, and there's various other sports. But they're struggling at the moment. They're struggling with the fact that there's no revenue basically being generated because they've got nothing to show. So we have to ensure that when it does happen, because as much as the government are giving these grants and loaning money and so forth, they're going to want it back, and it's have to come back some way. And from our perspective, is we've got to ensure that it doesn't come from the boxing budget. So if we're not up there, that we could be affected by that. And I've seen in the past, it only takes for one executive to say, well, what are we doing boxing for? And it's out. It was nearly out the door at Sky when I left.
Yes. So just to go over a few different points then. At the moment, Joe Joyce versus Daniel Dubois is scheduled for July, isn't it? But it was scheduled for the O2 Arena, I believe, yeah? So
Correct.
Is that out of the question, that big event at the moment then? No, I don't mean at the O2, but those two fighting, given that, could one of the 5 fights in one of the events in July be those two?
No, it's certainly
because the economics don't. The economics
don't work, and we've got to see what they say on Sunday. If you recall, when we originally postponed it to July, that was on the basis that, everybody was saying this is going to last for 3 months, and then we'll get back to whatever normal is. I don't know what normal is going to be anymore. There'll be a new normal. I'm quite sure of that, the way this is all panning out. So I can't give you that information at all yet. But once we know, we'll deal with it. But obviously, a fight of that magnitude needs a live gate, and it needs to feed off of a live gate. It needs the atmosphere to get more out of the fighters. What we'll be talking about coming back with is probably fights at maybe a British title level, maybe if we're lucky, maybe a European. But that's what we're looking at doing. We could put anything into a studio. Anything can go into a studio or into a small venue without the crowd there. We can do all those things, but we've got to be sensible what we've got to do. we're doing, and we've got to try it out and make sure it works, because and make sure that we as a sport can deliver what we're saying, and make it work. I mean, people said to me, "Oh, what venues are you going to?" When you're doing a show live, TV companies send an OB unit there. I don't know if you've been in the back, you've been in an OB unit. Everybody sits quite close together. So again, how's that going to work for social distancing and so on? Yeah. So many, it's not just us, it's everybody involved in this, how you make it work, because what's most paramount is the health and safety issue here, and making sure people are protected.
So on the venues itself, what have you looked at in terms of venues? Obviously, you mentioned TV studio there, and obviously you have deals at BT Sport. Is it possible to have it at BT Sport? You mentioned to me last night that you've looked at a couple of hotels potentially in London as well.
Well, we looked at a couple of things. We looked at doing it. We've obviously looked at the studio at BT Sport, basically because we did Total Combat there, so we know it works. We know we can do it there. We've looked at actually locking everybody in a hotel, locking them down in a hotel, and they train there, taking somewhere over, and actually using either a ballroom or putting in a like a massive marquee, so that we can basically build a studio in there. We've looked at all these various different scenarios, but we've got to wait to see what they say on Sunday. We're prepared to move quickly once we know what the criteria is going to be.
And would you do 2 shows a week then, like a Wednesday or Saturday, do you think, or would it be?
No, at the moment it'd be 1 per week, and we'll see where we go for that. We'll review it.
Is there anything in the guidelines that the Boxing Board of Control have laid out that give you concerns, like people over 70 with asthma, any heart complaints? There's no spitting in a bucket, of course. Boxers and everyone, only the boxers removing their masks when they box, everyone else wearing masks, no announcer, no ring card girl, no TV cameras in the ring. Do you agree with all these things?
Well, not in any of those orders. I mean, ring card girls are only there for the public anyway, so that's not going to be needed. Regarding people being over 70, that's only going to affect any license holders who are involved in the sport over 70. I'm lucky. I don't fall in that category at the
2
moment.
more years, isn't it?
Yeah, well, but it's still 2 years, so I'm out of that. So that situation again, they say people over 70. I just don't feel that you can just say people over 70 and that's it, because I know some people who are in their 70s who are much fitter than people in their 40s. So, but it's a generalisation, and obviously that can be looked at. So that'd be nitpicking. My biggest concern out of all of it is the situation with the spitting. Now, if a fighter normally goes back to the corner, he'll take some water. If he's got blood in his mouth or whatever happens, it's a natural reaction to spit. And I think it won't be, if there is, that's something we've got to look at, because the boxers have got to feel comfortable in that corner. And there are ways to do that. Instead of a bucket, maybe finding some sort of other receptacle, maybe
a sanitised bag or removed then immediately.
You see that with fighters. It's difficult sometimes. And after, it's a natural reaction for any sportsman. You see footballers do it. I'm not about spitting in somebody's face. I'm talking about, when they're playing, it just happens. And
or they clear their noses out sometimes, don't they? All that kind of,
So what you're going to do, so we've got to look at that and be realistic. So we've got to come up with something that can deal with that. But I think we're all bright enough and clever enough to do that.
The boxer can clear his nose into a tissue and put it into the bag as well, can't he? It's not
whatever it is. I mean, it could, as long as we've got something there that's disposable, that's not that immediately is disposable in between rounds. It's not going to be something that's being used all night and so forth. That's what we've got to do. It won't be a bucket, the traditional spit in a bucket filled with sawdust. So I just feel that's one thing that needs to be looked at. And other than that, I think a few little things that it's a guideline at the moment, and a lot of it is, the majority of it, 99% of it is absolutely what it is. And I'm sure there's, as I say, it will evolve. I'm sure there's some things that we will come up in addition to that.
Yeah.
But we won't know until we've done it. It's all about. At the end of the day, it's all about once it starts. Once it's put into practice, is how we can maintain the safety level of everybody concerned, and I'm quite sure there'll be even more improvements to it.
What do you think about the WBC proposal as well, if it needs be, that they may have judges judging from remote in the instance of, I know to us who know boxing, it seems anathema initially because you watch a different fight on TV to what you watch live. But let's say, for example, they are putting a WBC world title fight on and they can't get the judges there to the venue because it's due to travel restrictions, but they want the fight to go ahead and they want certain judges doing it. What do you feel about their proposal that they may have judging from remote?
Look, they're trying to be innovative and they're trying to make it work for the sport, and I get where they're coming from. I mean, obviously we prefer the judges to be there live because they're at ringside and they see it. And, you know, if you are watching it from a remote position, you're obviously watching it on television. What you don't want to be seeing, if I'm a judge watching it on television, is the following. I don't want to hear the commentary because I've seen fights live and then watched them back afterwards, and the commentator's seen a different fight than I've seen.
Yeah.
And I've seen and a different fight sometimes than the audience has seen.
Yeah.
They call it a bad decision, and the audience has seen it a different way. So I don't want to be influenced by that. And then the other thing you get is the graphics for a fight. You know, one of the commentators will put his score up.
Yeah.
You know, they'll say, you know, for example, you know, John Rawlings has got the fight so much in this guy's favour. So we don't want to be an influence. I don't mean, when I say influence, I mean from a, you know, like a subconscious sort of thing, you know, that they're being. So I don't particularly like that. I don't feel that it'd be a problem for judges to attend the promotion. They don't have to sit right at ringside. They can sit back at a distance. It's not as though they're going to be surrounded by members of the public or anything. So I don't know. The travelling situation, I understand that. I mean, there's not a lot of people want to be getting on planes at the moment for obvious reasons. So, but then in a lot of countries where this is going to take place, you know, your traditional boxing countries, say like here in the States, there are enough judges in our country and those countries to be able to judge a fight. It's something we've got to look at and we've got to think about. But it's, you know, the one thing about them, they are paying attention to it and they're coming out and being proactive, and that's very important at the moment, that everybody is proactive with the sport, so that when we do get it going, they're taking everybody's opinions into consideration before they put these things into action.
So the bottom line with all of this is, come Sunday, when the guidelines are laid out by Boris Johnson and the government, and where football, for example, comes back, when all these things are given the green light, you're gonna be ready yourself to get events moving again at a date in the future. That you know, and we're looking at mid-July. So all planning is geared towards that at the moment. With
whatever the date is, we'll be ready to go. I mean, you know, we've got cards made up and ready. There are guys ticking over, waiting to get back in the gym.
Can you give us a hint? Can you give us a hint on? But you have got sets of boxers who you've said, get ready, you're going to be on a card, yeah?
What we've done, we've looked at fights that we already had made.
Yeah.
That have been postponed. And that's where we're at. I'm not going to go into the details.
But you, as you said, British, maybe British and below rather than...
But the board have already said, you know,
yes,
it's at a certain level to start with. And that's where we're going to be. And obviously, you know, financially, it's got to, you know, there's no money to be made in this. As I say, we're keeping the sport relevant and more importantly, giving the guys some work. But the most important thing, we don't want to be blowing our brains out. We want to, you know, we want to make sure that we're, you know, that these are as viable as they can be. But it's going to be financially, it's going to be tough. But we have to do it because obviously we believe in the sport. We believe that eventually, you know, things will change.
On the wider issues, there's been a lot of talk about Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, all these things. Will they both step aside, Kubrat Pulev and Deontay Wilder, and will we move ahead? Because the lockdown, the magnitude of those kind of fights could be much longer. I know you can't give me anything concrete because we actually don't know. All that talk about talks have begun. I get it. Talks are always going.
I'll give it to you concrete. I can speak for a matter, factually. You can speak about facts. The facts are Tyson is contracted to fight Deontay Wilder. That fight was supposed to take place in July, and for obvious reasons, it's not taking place. So as soon as it's able to take place, it will do. Regarding Anthony Joshua, they announced that he's fighting Pulev, and I understand that's contracted. So both fighters have contracts. With regard to discussions or negotiations going on between all the people involved, that's just not happening. The reason is there's nothing to negotiate until you have an offer of where to stage the fight, a financial concrete offer. What is there to negotiate? Nothing. So as it is now, it's in a situation where that's how it is. And soon as we're allowed to get these fights, or I get our fight on, we'll get it on and get that commitment out of the way as soon as possible. If we've all signed NDAs with one of the countries that are interested, and that is it. There are no negotiations. There's nothing happening. And when they are, the respective parties from our side, which is Bob Arum, MTK, are involved as Tyson's, those his management advisors, and ourselves. We will have our respective roles in it, and we will deal with them. But those three parties speak as one. We're all on the same page. So, but nothing is happening regarding negotiations. Zero. Now, I've got my own opinions on the fight. I know Tyson wants to fight, and we spoke about it. And if something were to happen, it's going to be interesting to see whether Matchroom and Anthony Joshua step up to the plate, because I don't think they will. I don't think they fancy the fight.
Is there reason as well, watching the longitude of this thing, if fans aren't coming together, if we can't get 30,000 or 28,000 or 50,000 fans together for a Fury Wilder fight, could that be viable just as a pay-per-view behind closed doors, or do we have to have the gate?
Yeah, of course it does. It depends where it takes place, doesn't it? I mean, it's not going to, at the end of the day, none of these things are going to happen unless wherever it is, in this country or another country, none of these events will take place unless they're safe to do so. And if somebody's going to put up a truckload of money to get that fight away, or to host that fight, then they obviously want to recoup their money, or recoup some of their money. They're not going to do it in an empty arena. That's just what I don't see that happening at all.
John Fury against Mickey Theo might do a few numbers online. Is there any chance that could go on a card or not?
No. The Border Control not going to license them, are they? And you can't do it at their ages. Look, what they're doing for charity, good luck to them and God bless them, and I hope they're both coming out safe. But, at that age, come on.
And again, presumably the same principle applies for these young men, or they're not that young, or certainly Joe Joyce isn't, but for Daniel Dubois and Joe Joyce, similar conditions for how you do Fury and Wilder. Is there a chance that fight could be seconded onto that card if it was a big enough venue? Let's say it was Saudi Arabia and there was a huge site fee, and could that fight go onto that card potentially?
Not at this moment in time, but we don't know what's going to happen. But the simple reason is, Gareth, is it's going to be about needs and necessities.
Yeah.
And we're all in. If I had a crystal ball right now, we'd make a fortune. But I haven't got it because I don't know. I just can't give any of those answers.
It's very interesting, isn't it? That the longer this goes on, the more you think about it, the more complex it gets, doesn't it? It's extraordinary.
The government can't even tell you what's going to happen yet because they're relying on science, and the scientists don't know yet.
Yeah.
I mean, they're still trying to find a vaccine for this. And even if they do find a vaccine, they've got to trial it. And once they trial it, and if it's successful, please God, and they do that quickly, in this country, they've got to vaccinate 66 million people. They ain't going to do that in a day.
Do you think the UFC are taking a big risk going ahead with 3 events in the next 11 days?
Look, they're doing it in an environment similar to the environment of what we're doing. Everybody forgets about what WWE have been doing. They've been doing events regularly, so they've been putting their events on. And are they using the same facility, or is it a different facility that they're
I
using?
don't know, actually. I just know
Whatever
that
it
they
is,
had an event.
you know, Dana White's not an idiot, is he? I mean, he's a very sensible guy, and I'm sure the last thing they'll want to be happening is that anybody catches the virus through putting those events together. So they're going to be ultra careful. They're a very, you know, a savvy business, and I'm quite sure at the end of the day they'll get it away, and they'll get it. What's going to happen, and that's it. But there's a different. Their model is a different model from boxing. I mean, obviously they need the live gates and so forth, but it's a totally different model than ours.
No, I mean, I outlined it in a story in the Telegraph earlier this week that they're testing the fighters every day through the process. The hotel is sealed off. PPE, people, and it's the same with your guidelines. The people cleaning the rooms are wearing PPE equipment. Food is being delivered to the room by people wearing equipment, you know, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
As safe as it can possibly be. It's like something out of a futuristic movie, frankly. Do you know what I mean? You know, but we're here now, you know.
As I say, it's needs be, and you've got to you want it to happen, then you've got to do these things, and that's going to be the same for boxing. There's going to be no more entourages while this is going on. There's not going to be, can I bring the mate into the show? Can I bring my family? None of that's going to happen. The boxer's going to show up with his corner man, you know, and second, and that's it. That's what will be there, and these rules will not be bent for anybody, because at the end of the day, the promoters the promoter is going to be where the buck stops. Anything goes wrong, we're going to get it being on our heads. If you look at the guidelines that put out, look what our obligations are, and we have to pass those obligations on to an insurance company. The only way we can get insurance is to adhere to them to the letter, and that's what we've got to do.
So the final thing on this is the travel is a big aspect now as well, isn't it? You know, when you've got Wilder who's American, Tyson Fury who's British, where does the event take place? Where does the travel involve? That's a very complicated part of it, because we don't know about international travel yet, do we?
We don't at the moment. You can't travel to the States from here. So we do know, and that's the problem. And who does want to travel? As I mentioned, you know, of course there'll be, when it's get lifted and for the sort of money involved in these fights, maybe there'll be, be private planes. But we don't know where it's going to go on. We don't know when it's going to be allowed, and that's where we are. And it's the same thing if we're doing a show here where we've got to bring in guys from abroad. Nothing stops us bringing them from abroad, and people are arriving in this country now from abroad, but we're going to have to quarantine them for 14 days. Yeah. They're going to have to be locked down, and if you're locking them down for 14 days, they're going to have to bring their own sparring partner to be locked down with. So there's a lot of this, you know, and we're in a position sometimes where, as we all know, fighters get injured. Somebody gets injured. How are you going to draft somebody in last minute? It's not like pick up the phone. Oh, yeah. Come down, you know, Bill Bloggs is injured. Is your guy fit and well? Is he ready to go? Yeah, okay, we've got a job for you last minute. That can't be happening now. Unless you line somebody up who's also going to go in lockdown, also going to be, you know, basically going into quarantine to be a substitute. And so there's lots of aspects of this sport. You know, boxing's a very unique sport. You know, a tennis tournament, if one of the key players gets injured, the tournament goes ahead. Club, somebody gets injured, the team still plays. Golf, somebody gets injured, it still plays. Boxing, get injured, you're in trouble unless if you can't get a substitute opponent, it's all over.
You know, it's that weird process as well. Is if someone has COVID-19 or coronavirus and they're asymptomatic, how long do they have to keep testing for? It's so complicated, isn't it? It really is.
I know, and all we can do is be guided by the medical profession and their guidelines.
Final thing, and it's attracted a lot of attention in the last couple of days. Yeah, you won't have missed it. Tyson Fury Mike Tyson busting a few shapes, then looking in shape because he's in the gym. We know how popular he is. Obviously, you know Mike Tyson well. You've had your own dealings with him over the years, good, bad, and indifferent. But you're the guy that brought him here, you know, and it was massive, wasn't it, back in 2000? What do you think about him coming back and saying he wants to do charity exhibition fight. Sonny Bill Williams, the rugby player from New Zealand, said he'd love to fight him in $1 million fight. Are these things good that are coming out of this lockdown?
What's the difference between Mike Tyson fighting and John Fury fighting?
Well, not a lot, really. They've both been out for 30 years.
They're roughly the same age. So what's the difference? There's no difference. For me, he's never going to get licensed. I don't think he's allowed in the UK, but he certainly won't get licensed here. Are they going to license him in the States? Are the Nevada Commission or New York going to license him? I very much doubt it. If he does do something, it's an exhibition. Nobody can stop that from happening wherever it takes place. It'll take place. Is it as long as like the likes of the WBCs, the WBOs, or whatever, come out and say, they do not support this, but it can't be right. It's not George Foreman coming back. This is Mike Tyson, who's been, he's been in. He's had to say over the last few years, he's been doing some extraordinary things. I mean, how would he get a license? And on his own admission, I think only up until about a week ago, it seemed to me he was saying he was he's got a cannabis farm.
Yeah, that's right. He has, cannabis.
He's opened a cannabis farm, and he was sat, and I was here, and he was his best customer. So I doubt if he even passed the drug test.
And finally, we're approaching 7 weeks in lockdown now. As I said, you look very well. What have you learnt? What are the things you've learnt maybe about yourself or things around yourself in the last 7 weeks that have really come up that you may have not had the chance to when we're all rushing around and very busy?
I'm quite sometimes impatient, and I've had them for whatever it is. I've got to be patient because, like everybody else, I've got to be patient. What have I learned about myself? I've always been pretty comfortable over the last few years with myself anyway. I mean, I'm all good. I sort of do get a bit, I look at some articles sometimes that are being written and I sort of wonder where they get it from. I mean, I was reading Jim White's article yesterday in the Telegraph.
How about you and Hearn never having met, but Eddie Hearn never having met?
Yeah, and he mentioned about, I've got to work together, I've got to do this and that. I've put quite a few shows on involving their fighters and vice versa. When you look back, Kid Galahad and Josh Warrington I promoted. That was Kid Galahad's a matchroom fighter. We did a deal before it fell apart for various reasons with Billy Joe Saunders to fight in Massachusetts, if you remember, against their fighter.
Okay, Hugo Andrade, yeah.
Against Andrade. So we did that and it didn't happen. So, I've got no problem making the right fights for my guys. It's not about that at all. It was just a question I was asked and I responded to.
Didn't Hearn call you out once for a fight, a charity fight or something as well?
Yeah, could you? Yeah, I mean, and I think I remember being on the phone and that sprung to my mind. And I see him coming down the street. He come to mind, and I thought I might take him up on that. But he walked across. He didn't wink at me or all that nonsense. That just did not happen. And as I said to Jim White, I know he's got a reputation of being a winker, but it just didn't happen.
It's great to see you.
I'll have that charity fight. Him and his dad and me in a room. That'd be a good one.
Brilliant. It's great to...
Okay. So look, it's tough for everybody at the moment. We've got to make the best of what you can. And I think how lucky I am and how lucky you are compared to some people. I'd hate to think how this would have been when I was a kid in a council flat, with my brothers and sisters and my mum and dad in there. Could you imagine how that must be for some people?
Well, and also, but being younger, like I know what I would have been feeling at the moment. I loved playing cricket in the summer and I captained my school team. There's no cricket. You can't play sport together. School off. Or, for the youngsters, it must be so difficult.
And teenagers, you're at that age where you want to be out and about. I mean,
you're in love, or you're, whatever it is, Well,
you're all right where you are. You're still in love with yourself, so you're good there. But
stop that! Right, I'm cutting you off at this point.
All right. You good and enjoy yourself, young man, and I'll see you soon. No doubt.
Lovely. Cheers, Frank.